Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name is Victoria and in today's video we'll be drafting a 3-part corset top. For this tutorial we'll be needing the following measurements. And without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So the first thing to do is to draw a horizontal line at the beginning of the pattern paper, and we'll be inserting all our vertical measurements from that line. So I'll start by marking my bust point at 11 inches, my under bust at 15, and the full length of the top at 18 inches. You can always increase or reduce the top length to suit you, but I'll be using 18 inches for mine. So I'll just go ahead and mark the same 3 points on the other side before going ahead to draw horizontal lines across. After which I'll be indicating what each line stands for. So I'm just indicating my bust point, my under bust, and my waist. So now it's time to create the neckline and the shoulder slope. And for the neckline, I'll be using 3 inches for both the neck width and the neck depth. Even though I won't be using this neckline for the top, as you can see, but it will serve as a guide. So after creating the neckline, it's time to work on the shoulder and armhole. So on the horizontal line, I'll be marking my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. And from that point, I'll be going down by 1 inch, and I'll connect that point in a slope to meet the neckline. And from the end of that slope, I'll be marking my upper chest line. So to determine your upper chest line, simply take your bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5. So first I'm going to connect that point to meet the shoulder slope before squaring it out like so. And then I'm going to insert my bust circumference divided by 4 on that line. But first I'm going to indicate my center front and that this pattern will be cut on a fold. So now I'm going to be inserting my horizontal measurements divided by 4, starting with my bust circumference at 10 inches. And I'll be using that to create the armhole. So I'm just going in with my French curve to connect the shoulder point to the bust measurement. So now that the armhole has been created, I'm going to determine where I want the neckline of my corset top to begin, and I'll be using 6 inches. Even though I realized afterwards that 6 inches was too high, so I ended up using 7 at the end. So at this point you can mark 7 inches or 7.5. So the N stands for my new neckline. So after deciding on the neckline, the next thing to do is to create the dart, and I'll be using my bust span measurement divided by 2. So I'm just going to mark that measurement across all 4 points. So I'll be marking the 4 inches on the neckline, the bust line, the under bust line, and the waistline, before going ahead to connect them with a vertical line like so. Now to create the dart, I'll be marking 1 inch on both sides of the vertical line along the waist and the under bust line. Now for someone with a smaller bust size, at this point you can use 3/4 of an inch or even half an inch for your dart. So now I'm just going to connect those points together like so. Then I'll be connecting the lines to meet the bust point in a curve. So I'm just going in with my French curve and I'll be connecting it like so. And I'll do the same for the other side as well. Now please pay attention to this part. On the under bust line, we'll be coming up by half an inch on both sides of the curve. And then on the bust line, we'll be going up by 2.5 inches along the center front. The reason I'm doing this is so as to create the part I'm indicating right now. So you can choose to go up by 2 inches, it's up to you. So from that point, I'll be going in by half an inch, and I'm just going to connect it with my ruler. So this is the part I'm trying to create. Remember, this pattern will be cut on a fold, so when you open up this piece, the ½ inch I went in by becomes 1 inch. So I hope this is clear. First I went up by ½ inch from the under bust, and then from the bust line I went up by 2.5 inches, and I went in by ½ inch from the center front. So now I'm going to connect that point along the center front to meet the point I marked on the curve. So I'm just going in with my French curve to connect the 2 points like so, before going ahead to connect that same point to the neckline. So again, I'm going in with my French curve and I'm just connecting that point to meet the neckline. Now for the other side, we're going to begin by taking the difference between your bust and your under bust. Mine gave me 4 inches, and I'm going to mark that 4 inches along the bust line, and I'll also be adding ½ inch to that point in order to create room for my bust around the armhole. So that's a total of 4.5 inches, and I'll be connecting that point to meet the points on the curved dart. So I'm just going in with my French curve and I'm connecting the 2 points together like so. And then from the bust line, I'm just going to square that up to meet the upper chest line before connecting it to the neckline. Now, in order to create a 3-part corset, we'll be creating a second and third darts along the bust line. So first I'm going to mark ½ inch on both sides of the bust band along the bust line, and then I'll be marking ½ inch on both sides of the curve along the side and along the center front. And then I'm just going to connect all these points together. So first I'm connecting the sides to meet the ½ inch from the bust span, and then I'm going to connect the center front to meet the ½ inch on the other side. And that will be all for the second and third darts. So you can see that a 3-part corset has been created. So I'm just going to go ahead and indicate which one is which. So that's the first one, this is the second, and that is the third. So we're going to be cutting out all the darts, so I'm just marking the parts we'll be cutting out. Now it's time to start inserting my horizontal measurements divided by 4. So on the bust line, I'm marking my bust circumference divided by 4. On the under bust line, I'll be marking my under bust circumference divided by 4. Plus the 2 inches I took in for the darts. So I'm just going to add that 2 inches, and also I'll be marking my waist circumference divided by 4 plus 2 inches for the darts as well. So right now I'm just extending the lines to accommodate my seam allowances, and I'll be using 1.5 inches for the seam allowance. So I'm just going to be marking 1.5 all the way down before connecting with my ruler. Never mind that the shape is a bit funny along the side, it's going to come together when the pieces are joined. So I forgot to add allowance around the hem. It was only after I started cutting before I realized that I didn't add allowance. So I just went ahead to add 1 inch allowance around the hem. After which I went ahead to cut out the front pattern. So I'll be cutting around the 3 parts that will form the cup. So that means I'll be cutting out all the darts because I won't be needing that. So just pay attention to what I'm doing. So when you're done cutting, this is what it should look like. It should have a total of 5 separate pieces. So now I'm going to indicate which one goes to the center front and which one goes towards the side. This will make it easy for me when it's time to join the pieces together. And now it's time to create the back pattern, and I won't be needing the cups for that. So first I'm just going to place this piece on a fresh pattern paper, and then I'm going to be tracing along the center front and the side. But because I want the back to have a zipper, I'm first of all going to insert my zipper allowance, and I'll be using 1.5 inches for that. Then I'm going to be placing the front piece from that zipper allowance, and I'll be taking note of the dart space between the both pieces before going ahead to trace the sides. So first I'm just transferring important points before going ahead to trace out the side. And I'll be doing the same for the center back. So I'll just go ahead and square out the lines and indicate which one is which. So from the neck, I'll be going down by 1 inch along the center back, and I'm just going to connect that to the side because I don't want it to be straight. So I'm just connecting the center back to the side, and I'm indicating the neckline, the center back, and that I'll be needing 2 pieces for this pattern. So now it's time to create the dart for the back, and for that I'll be marking my bust band measurements divided by 2 along the waist, the underbust, the bust, and the neckline, before using my ruler to connect all points. And then on the waistline, I'll be marking 1/2 inch on both sides of the bust span line before going ahead to connect those 2 points to the neckline in a triangle. Before cutting out the back pattern, I'm going to be adding 1/2 inch allowance across the neckline. And that's basically all for the back. But I'll be concealing the dart at the back, so I'm just opening up one side of the dart and I'm going to tape it down like so before cutting it out on the fabric. So guys, we're done drafting out the pattern for the 3-part corset top. I'm going to be adding seam allowance around the cups when cutting it out on the fabric. And like I said, my neckline was too high, so I'll be taking out 1 inch around the neckline. And in my next video, I'll be sharing with you guys the stitching process of this 3-part corset top. So we've come to the end of this video. I hope you found it helpful. Please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. And I will see you in my next video.